Eyewear. Righto, well, welcome to CHOON, presented by Childe Eyewear, and this is the Swellian Noise Hour, where we celebrate and chinwag with musos, artists, comedians, entertainers, cultural game changers, I reckon, who are, I don't know, are there to really just lighten up these dark times, Smivvy, inspire us with like creative inspiration. Did that work? Inspire with inspiration? That works, eh?
Yeah.
And actually just bring some sadly missing, ransacked, obsolete joy back into our lives, Smiv. It's pretty dark times out there, depending who you're talking to, but today's guest, far out, absolute icon of the global comedy community and basically a mainstay of every Australian household, far out since he first came in here in 88. Is that about right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. He's been on TV, films, and he's toured the country for as long as I can remember. I've been going to shows since I was 17, mate. I've been to so many. DYRSL was my first Jimeoin show.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the show,
Yeah, thank you very
first of all.
Thank you very much.
How are you? I could just rave on forever here.
Yeah, I'm good. DYRSL, I know
Yeah.
it well, yeah. They've done the front, but the back area is just got the same old shitty carpet that they've always had.
How good?
Yeah.
It's sticky?
Backstage, you always want to go backstage. If you're in a rock band, everyone wanted to get backstage.
Yeah.
But you don't want to get backstage to see a comedian because it's so depressing place. Like,
What's going on backstage at a
nothing.
comedy show? Nothing.
tea.
So when you finish the show
Coffee.
and you go back in, it's not like just girls and hang up like
no.
groupies and everyone's just partying their head
I've
off.
seen some photographs of Led Zeppelin backstage and all that, and I go,
Yeah.
wow, that looks fantastic. But no, it's kind of dull. There's an odd good night.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a couple of real good nights backstage, don't get me wrong. But if you're doing it every night, then you just can't be going mad, especially on a Tuesday.
Yeah, true that. Mate, you're in town to do the Koala fundraiser up at Bangalore.
Yeah.
I was there last year.
Yeah,
That was good
the
fun.
A&I Hall.
Yeah.
It's a lovely venue.
It is good. How's the backstage at that one?
It's the world, because there is no backstage. There's a door that leads out to the world. So yeah,
So the whole world is backstage.
the whole world is backstage. Yeah, which is pretty good actually. A lot going on.
That's gold, mate. Well, thanks for making the time to come and sit with
Yeah.
us here on the Swellian.
Yeah, and
We are big fans.
So who's the sponsors? Is it John that does the
It
sunglasses?
is.
Yeah.
Johnny's, I've got these ones, the Oracles. They're my favourite, the Torts.
Yeah.
You've got a few pairs of those, don't you, mate?
I have one pair. Yeah, I'm not really a big sunglasses person, but oh, jeez, tighten my head. Oh, nice lens.
Look a bit like Dame Edna.
Yeah. Hey, on possums. Here we all going, eh? I'm enjoying the microphone, to be honest. It comes quite naturally to me holding a microphone. There's a guy, a comedian, Dave O'Neill, and he does it in a car coming back from a gig, but with a microphone.
What, he just like practices or goes through his
No, he
routine?
does a podcast. So we were driving back from somewhere in the middle of Victoria, and he's next to me, holding the microphone, and chatting.
Yeah.
I thought it was quite kind of funny just to.
Was
I
he
wondered
actually
if he'd get
recording a
pulled over by the
podcast, or was he
police.
just, that's how he talks to people when he's in the car?
He does a podcast in the car after the gig, but it's not like a wired up microphone. He's driving, but one hand on the wheel and the other holding the microphone.
That is classic.
Is that against the law? Is it?
Yeah. Would have to be, wouldn't it?
Oh, mate, everything's against the law in this country. You can't fucking do anything these days.
Yeah.
Can't do a podcast in your car. Can't fucking
Can you do it? Can you
scratch
drink
yourself
in the car?
driving. Beer?
Yeah.
No.
You're not allowed to drink at all.
No, but what you do is you get
If
those...
you blow under 0.05, is that fine?
I think you can't have an open alcoholic beverage in the car. So even other people can't drink in the car, technically,
All right.
I think. But yeah.
I need to brush up on the law a wee bit.
Yeah. How long have you been here?
Before I get myself into
How
trouble.
long have you been driving around with beers
Yeah.
in your car?
Mate, what's the stupidest fine you've ever copped in this country?
Stupid is fine.
Yeah.
Oh, I got a real big one for speeding. I lost my license.
Oh, fuck.
And I got a big one for being on the phone.
Yeah.
And because I was in a hire car and I couldn't get the car AirPlay, whatever it's called, CarPlay, to work. So they sent me a fine, which was and 5 points, like $600. And I contested it, so they sent me the photograph, and there was no getting out of it. You could see the photograph of me just holding the phone. And it lit up my face and everything, so I was gone.
Is it like that back in Ireland? Like, are they as hands-on with laws and this kind of any-state kind of shit?
Yeah. In America, you don't have to. You can have the phone up to your ear, and all of that. They don't mind that. Yeah. Yeah, you can drive unless they've changed it of recent.
Wow.
Mate, I wanted to ask just quickly before we get into it, just because we're a surf podcast. Like, you surf a bit, right?
I suppose you could say I try to surf. Yeah, I do. I can surf a little bit on a big board, and then I just over the years, I just was obsessed with watching it and just going, "Wow, that looks like so much fun." And but if you don't learn it when you're young, it's very hard. There's so many things to try and get out. There's about 5 or 6 things that you got in timing wise. They've all got to fall into place. But yeah, I do enjoy it. I had to go with that hydrofoiling with an engine in it, and I think surfing's more fun.
Yeah,
to be honest, because it's kind of once you're up, it's kind of. But with surfing, like if you get that moment where you can really watch that silver line in front of you and just keep your eyes on it and just go along. It's a great feeling.
And matey, are you across? If you love watching it, are you across kind of the Irish surf scene that's playing out at home?
Yeah,
because like about 2 hours from where you grew up. You grew up in Port
Stewart.
So that's about 2 hours from some of the most heinous slabs and big wave surf spots in the world today. Yeah,
there's lots of surfing where I come from now. And with such good wetsuits, you can go and it's cold.
True.
But you go down to Portrush, the West Strand or East Strand, whatever it is. There's like a lot of people surfing, and good at it too.
Yeah.
One time I was back in February, because I always tour. I'll be going to the UK after doing this.
Yeah.
And I'm always there in the winter. And I flew to Ireland. I had jet lag, and I thought I'll go walk along the beach just to try and wake up. And it was getting dark, and I thought, it's a bit scary out of here at this time of night, like kind of big swell. And I looked out, and there was 2 guys surfing, and you could just make them out. And they were catching it off this, coming off this rock face, and it was just curling, and they could proper surf. And I was like, wow, February, and it's dark, and they're out there.
That's the peak season, the Northern European winter. That's when you get the big swells. I was up in...
and there's no sharks.
No sharks, mate. Sharks. I know. It's crazy. You'd almost take the cold weather over the sharks, I reckon. Like, the shark thing's a fucking real deal here. It's always in the back of your mind. But I spent some time up there around Sligo. That's kind of northeast.
Where?
Sligo.
Yeah, it's a small island, really. So you could get there in a couple of hours.
Yeah. So. Pretty pumping waves around there, and further
if it's
further
coming
south, Lahinch was kind of the mecca.
It's uninterrupted. The next bit of land is America, so you get big swells coming through. And the same as Portugal, that's the same sort of swell that's hitting there.
Yeah. Well, the Irish surf culture's sort of been fizzing along for a long time, obviously. But when you were growing, there would have been surfers having a crack at some of these waves.
Yeah, we did it when we were kids. Yeah. We did it in longboards, and you could get up. Yeah. And when you're a kid, you could stand when there was no wave at all, just stand up.
Yeah.
But we used to love doing it. And but we didn't have wetsuits. I had a wetsuit. It was way too big for me. And there was a mile of, you're just water's rolling around you.
Yeah. And, it's hectic. Do you sense when you're playing in these coastal towns that have like a really big surf culture? Like, do you do gigs in like Bundoran or?
Yeah. No, I never do Bundoran. That's a small town, but I'm aware in Portrush now that they've got surf shops. Yeah. And if you go, you see people, and then the pub people go, "There's great swell today," and you're like, "Wow, everyone's into it now." So. Yeah. Classic, no, I've never been to. I've been to Bundoran as a kid, but I haven't. I wasn't aware that there was a good surf scene there.
Yeah, it's pretty big, man. And like, there's a lot of really great big name surfers coming from there. I want to butcher a few names for you.
Yeah, go on.
There's Gerard McDaid.
Yeah, something like that.
He's like kind of like the does that sound right?
What's the first one?
Gerard?
Gerard.
Geroid.
Geroid.
Hemorrhoid.
Hemorrhoid. That's what we call it. Exactly.
I feel bad. It's so like how it reads is not how it's said. Clearly, in
There's
Ireland,
a lot
but-
of that with names.
Yeah, exactly.
Chiffon,
But,
you want to see how that's written?
yeah, there was like Fergal Smith was up there. He was kind of trailblazing. Kane Kilcullen. Who else was up there? Easky Britton. He's like a 5-time national champ.
Yeah.
And Conor McGuire.
Connor
Magua.
Maguire.
Yeah, Maguire.
yeah,
Oh, so
yeah.
you just say Maguire.
Yeah.
Okay, fuck. Butchered that one, Smith.
But,
But
yeah.
these are guys who
Mick
have-
Fanning.
oh, of course, mate. The
His
great.
mum and dad are from Donegal.
That's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
wild.
yeah.
Is
I
it-
met him once. I was asking. He says, "I was back in Donegal," and I said, "Did he make a fuss?" And the guy next to him turned around and he goes, "They carried him down the main street."
No way.
Fair income. Is
Yeah.
there like a sense of pride around Fanning and his achievements?
Of
Do you know?
course.
You know?
Donegal town's a small town,
Yeah.
and the mother and father are both, I think, both from there. So, of course, they would make a song and a dance over that.
That's crazy.
You know, when he won the world title, I think there's just.
And does to your knowledge, do most Irish people, just in general, have a photo of Glen Micro Hall, the first Irish surfer to make the championship tour on their walls or bedboards?
No, never heard of him. Never.
Weird, Smivvy.
That is weird.
I just can't believe it. I thought he was one of the
Yeah.
all-time greats.
We
over
have
there.
a photograph of, normally on a plate, Kennedy, JF Kennedy.
Oh wow!
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Pope, of course. The Pope and JF Kennedy.
Classic.
Well,
Yeah.
we had in our house anyway.
Oh, that's
Well,
so
mate,
interesting.
Yeah. The reason
JF
why-
Kennedy was an Irish Catholic,
Yeah, part of the diaspora to the
and the Pope
States.
was a Catholic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mate, it's interesting. It's a good place to jump off on. Mate, tell us about your upbringing. So you grew up in an Irish town in the North of Ireland, and you would have been like a child during the 70s, more or less, when the fucking troubles
66 I was born.
were... Yeah.
And my mum and dad were over in England because my father was a plasterer and my mum was a school teacher. And then I was the youngest and we went back to Ireland to live in 1967, the year that it all kind of broke out.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was kind of but if you didn't know anything else, then that was it, really. That was what you kind of grew up with. And, you know, and they still have the undertones of, you know, they still have segregated schools, and which is probably it's the reason you still have, you know, the sort of situation you still got where, you know, everyone keeps themselves to themselves in certain areas. Like you have a Catholic estate, a Protestant estate. They had, DeLorean cars were made in Belfast.
That's right. And then, what was the story? They ended up being a bit of a scam or something? The guy
No,
who...
not really. No, he was hoodwinked into looking like he was buying cocaine from this mafia guy. That was in that film, The People First, Larry Flint.
Right.
Kind of strange connection. Anyway, he created this factory to help people in Northern Ireland, but they had one door was for Catholic employees and the other door on the other side was for Protestant employees.
And so during this period, like you're a grom growing up there, you know, this is like the Bobby Sands hunger strikes, like it's like there's the IRA's at like, you know, going ham, blowing shit up. There's like you're in the middle of that as a kid. What was that like? What did you see?
Well, in Portrush, we were living in Portrush at the time one summer, and we had cousins that came over from England and would stay during the summer. And there was a bomb scare, and they basically blew up the whole main street. Like 5 bombs went off, and we never saw our cousins again. That was the last time they ever came to Northern Ireland for the summer. But yeah, I mean, there was the place I grew up was actually kind of really interesting because it was an oasis in this war zone where we lived on the coast in this little sea town that would have been, I don't know, as big as friggin', you know, Byron. But, you know, no palm trees or nothing. We had no trees. It was too windy for trees.
Any drum circles or crystal charging stations?
No, none of that. No. But we had, this beautiful coastline. And Game of Thrones, most of Game of Thrones, a lot of Game of Thrones, especially those Irish things, were shot there. We should have that ringtone.
You can't avoid these things.
No. I should have turned mine
a few of
off.
those in the show tonight, probably.
Do you know that joke? This guy says to his friend, "What kind of ringtone have you got?" And he goes, "I haven't looked, but I think it's a brownie pink."
Coit
I'm
Lord.
going to steal that one.
Yeah.
So growing up in an environment like that, I mean, so you're in a utopian little seaside village, but just over the way there's fucking tenements packed with skinhead maniacs throwing bricks at each other.
So we weren't from the town of Port Stewart, but where my mum and dad were from was a predominantly, Irish Catholic area where there would have been a lot of like IRA and it would be a no-go zone for the British Army. And there was, Bloody Sunday happened in that time. And
what can you explain? A lot of people listening wouldn't be aware of what that was.
That's just like most wars, really. If somebody colonizes somewhere else, the people that were there first don't really like that. So, part of Ireland was occupied by the British, and the Irish people didn't like that. So they basically tried, I think to start with, there was a peace march from Belfast to Derry, inspired by the civil rights marches in America with Martin Luther King, and then they watched that on TV and said we should do something like that, and that peace march ended with 13 people being shot dead, and that really kind of ramped up the IRA in as far as they weren't that big. They were called the Provisional IRA, so they weren't really that big before that happened. But after that happened, that really, escalated, where they felt that we're not going to achieve what we're trying to achieve through peaceful means, and they decided, on a war.
So they essentially went from the Martin Luther King peace march route to the Malcolm X Nation of Islam.
Yeah.
We're gonna fucking
shoot
our way
and
out.
the way
Shoot
to
our way
do
out,
it
please.
was to strike at the mainland of Britain, and the people of Britain aren't really aware that, like, a lot of them wouldn't even know that part of Ireland is owned and occupied by Britain. So they wouldn't even come on their radar. And so whenever bombs were going off, they're going like, "What's this all about?" And you go, "Well, it's about the fact that the people on this island aren't happy with the presence of an occupying force."
And I read Johnny Lydon's book. It's called
No Dogs, No Blacks, No Irish.
Exactly right, mate. Yeah, and he talks about, like, probably like a similar-ish trajectory to you. Like, I think he grew up in a predominantly Irish Catholic community in England, labouring on building sites. And, yeah, like, there was a lot of racism towards Irish people, black people, and speciesism towards dogs, I guess. But, like, did you experience...
Dogs, the dogs got it tough too, didn't they? Yeah.
What was your experience of...
dogs and peace marches? What?
Yeah, you legged it to England, like, at a certain point.
There's a lot of Jamaican people too. They were the first kind of wave of migrants after the Irish. And then that was kind of like, I think dogs had been there quite a long time, but the Irish and the Jamaicans were, bunched in with the dogs. What did the dogs ever do wrong? Why did they deserve not to be allowed to rent flats?
By the time you got to England, like, how much of your life had been... was humour sort of starting to come in as a way to cope with all that stuff that was going on during your childhood, or was it...
I do remember the first time...
you just have a family that just had that attitude of, well, you got to laugh your way through this, or it's just going to be doomed?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, my parents were quite, strict Catholics, and the thought of violence did not, they were not really interested in and you could be born into a Republican family that was hell bent on the violent path of getting a united Ireland, or you could be born into a unionist family that were the opposite, fighting to keep it part of Britain. But we weren't. I was born into a family that violence it just wasn't a pathway for us. Although we consider ourselves Irish, but the violence was just never really on the cards. And I can't remember what the question was.
Well, it was just like when did sort of laughter
and
and comedy start to become sort of a, like, I don't know, was it a coping mechenism or was it just part of your family?
I didn't feel like I had to cope with anything. It was just an upbringing, and that was just the background. So you didn't have to cope with it. Because luckily, we dodged it all. I came out of it unscathed. A lot of people didn't. But when I went to London for 4 years before I came here. I was at college doing construction management, and I arrived and I went to pay for something with an Irish Northern Ireland £5 note, and they wouldn't accept it. And I was trying to explain to them that it was part of Britain, and she was going, "No, that says Ireland. And you go, have you any idea what this war?" And then I went to college, and one of the kids, the English kid, goes, what are you fighting about? What's that all about? And I go, do you not know what that's about? No, you need to show it. He says, I need to show it out, mate. You're going, this is all about England and invading there and being part of that. Yeah, but you're all fighting against that. Will you show it out? And you're like,
well, that's the ultimate joke.
Yeah, I know. So they're oblivious, and they still are oblivious. They couldn't, they wouldn't have a clue. A lot of them, what's going on in Northern Ireland.
And so, is that when you realised I can make people laugh because they're idiots?
I went to a football match, and Northern Ireland was playing England, and it was a bit, it was just racist taunts. But the one that really made me laugh was the English team going, "You're all a bunch of paddies," which is the biggest insult ever, because they were literally going, "No, we're British. We're British." They're like going, "No, you're Irish." But yeah. There was great comedy. There was great comedy in Ireland, in Northern Ireland in particular, that would be very much just a satirical look at the Troubles and taking the piss out of it. Yeah. And then once again, within Ireland, that got a big laugh, but you couldn't go beyond that. I don't think I would have done stand-up in the UK. It just so happened, something that happened here, because if I had done it in the UK, I would have started during the Troubles. The Troubles would have still been going on. So for me, with this accent, not to mention the Troubles, that would be like, the biggest white elephant. And I have no interest in politics, really. I'm not, I wouldn't talk about Trump in my show, or I wouldn't talk about anything to do with politics. So it doesn't come on my radar. So it just so happened that I started doing it over here, and people couldn't tell the difference between my accent and, a southern doily accent. Doily. They take the piss out of us. They go, nanny. That's them doing us.
There's a distinction, isn't there, between a Northern Irish accent and a Southern Irish accent? Oh, yeah. And it's a problem for, Southern Irish people often don't accept Northern Irish people just because of the accent.
I do really well in Derry and in Belfast, but in Dublin, it's always been a little bit tricky doing shows, because the main audience would hear the accent and then instantly go, "He's one of those Northerners."
That's so gnarly. And fuck, mate, I've been to Dublin. It's a rough town. There's skinheads galore in that joint, queuing up to punch your fucking head in when you leave the venue if you tell a couple of clangers.
We call them Free Staters. They don't know that, but it's just one of those terms that we called the Republic of Ireland the Free State.
I'm curious.
And we've got where I come from in Port Stewart, it's called Northern Ireland, and the Republic is called Southern Ireland. So we call it the South. But out of our house, out the front, looking north, you can see Donegal, which is in the south. So people go, "What's that?" And I go, "That's the south." And they go, "Where's the north?" Well, there's the north there, and that's the south. But we had when I went over, I got a SIM card for the mobile phone, and it was part of the UK. But if I was in the front room, it would pick up the receiver from Donegal, and you'd be charged on international roaming rates. You'd be sent these texts like, you're now on international roaming, so that's a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
And then, like, the phone would ring, so you'd have to run to the other side of the house before you answered it, because you'd be charged a fortune.
And
So we had this border, invisible border in our house somewhere.
Oh, mate. So mad. And what about the big Irish cultural influences? Like, I feel like Ireland punches way above its weight in terms of literature, music, from Oscar Wilde to James Joyce. And, and you go through the music, the Pogues, the Sex Pistols, Fontaine's DC today. But, like,
yeah, they're a great band. I went and saw them in
Melbourne.
You did? Yeah.
Yeah, they went off. They're insane. Yeah, they're just touring now, I think, more or less.
Yeah, I saw an ad for their shows coming up.
How does it feel seeing a contemporary Irish band like that? And, like, I think one of the things I really respect about Ireland and that band is that it's a very virtuous nation. The culture is very much about, like, there's a kind of social contract and a understanding of, taking
full on
care
Dublin accent too, and you can hear it in his vocals.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they talk about Irish things, and you go, "Oh yeah." I was very surprised and glad to see it got such an international audience. What about Kneecapped? Have you heard of them?
No.
There's this Irish rap band that's singing. We're from Belfast, but they rap in Irish, and then they made a film with Michael Fassbender was in it, and. It did so well. It got BAFTA nominations. I think it almost got an Oscar nomination.
Where he wears the fake head the whole time in it? It's not that one, is it? That's a kind of a musical film where he plays the lead singer in a band and he wears a giant mache head the whole time.
No, geez, I haven't seen that one. Weird work, Michael Fassbender.
So Kneecapped is like obviously a reference. I mean, that's what the IRA used to do to people, right?
Yeah. I think it was just it was one of those things. If you were a tout, that was a name for people that would talk to the police or give up details on their community. They would kneecap them, and it became one of those things that it became like an expression. Yeah, that was terrible. All that carry on, kneecap people or their elbows. War's ugly, really ugly.
Yeah, man. I'm tripping that you grew up in the middle of it. That blows me out. Like, you hear so much about that period. It's an iconic chapter in modern history. It's kind of the last, I don't know, like one of the real recent European civil wars. You're in the fucking guts of it, man.
But the worst of it was that I thought that was pretty much the end of wars. That was one of the last wars. Oh, thank God we've all... the human species has developed to the point where we don't do war anymore. Little did I realize that, you're not anything special to go through a war now. Loads of wars going on.
Yeah, it's a miracle if you don't almost.
Yeah.
It feels like it feels like that's the real miracle of living down here, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, talking about the big cultural influences like out of Ireland before and maybe they weren't even Irish ones, but I imagine like the culture, like I said, is very strong there with arts, which is a rad thing. And something I really like about Ireland too is that it seems to be a place where you can get working class and welfare class voices in the arts, in literature, in music, which is like generally when you go around European English-speaking countries, it's like the arts is pretty locked off to the bourgeois, and you often don't get that kind of lower class voice and style of art.
I would Billy Connolly was a massive influence to me, not just because he was a comic, but because he was talking with his accent. It was, unashamedly just full on Glaswegian accent, and he was talking about things that were very everyday-ish, that were exceptionally funny, and that was like a big inspiration to me because, anytime you saw people on TV, they were doing this kind of fake accent that didn't really exist, or the working class accent was a cliche in itself, like up, down, pit, and all that. But Billy Connolly, who was probably in his, early 30s at the time, it was just really inspiring to me. In every way, beyond comedy, of course, in comedy, but yeah, there was bands that we saw too. Like there was a band, the Undertones, and they were from Derry, and we kind of all knew the undertones, and that was great to see them. But the biggest one would have been Billy Connolly for me and of that generation.
Before you left England, was comedy already starting to come into your life? And like you said that you wouldn't have started over there doing that stand up.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't want to
it-
work. I worked on a building site, and I really, that was hard work.
Yeah.
And I was really hell bent on trying to find something that didn't involve that much hard work.
That's exactly why I'm sitting on this
That's
couch,
right.
mate.
Yeah,
It's the
yeah.
exact same trajectory as you.
We
yeah.
feel that.
Yeah, how can I find a way of making a living without working that hard? That's ridiculously hard. 6 days a week, and I wanted to be, if it was one of my kids said it, you'd be saying that's airy fairy bullshit. But I wanted to be in a band. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to do anything but freaking hard work.
100%, man. Yeah, swinging shovels on job sites is, mate, it's a great teacher in life, and it teaches you some cold hard realities about work ethic and the grind.
Yeah.
And it if that's what you got to go back to, it's a motivating force to get good at whatever art you want to pursue. But it's also not the worst thing to go back to because you're back on the job site with your mates. swinging
Yeah,
the shovel.
but also, it's good to have a hobby. It doesn't necessarily have to become your income, but it's nice to have some sort of hobby, and that's what stand-up was. It was like, it scared the shit out of me, just thinking, I'm going to go up there and tell some jokes. That started for me because I was trying to meet people other than the Irish group of people. I lived in Bondi, and I lived and hung out with all these Irish, English people, Scottish, whatever, travellers. We were all like sharing a flat, and we didn't really seem to be getting beyond that. It wasn't anybody. I've met a few people on building sites. They became good friends, but it was a night out that I went along to. My friend was seeing an English girl who was doing stand-up, and I went along, and they kept saying to her, Jimeoin knows loads of jokes, you should get him to get up. And she put my name down, and the guy came up and said, you're on next. And I went, oh, right. So I got up and told 3 jokes, like, jokes. They call them dad jokes now, but these jokes are good. Like, I know like loads of really good jokes. And the audience was laughing at the fact that I was actually having the audacity to tell a joke in the first place. And because they laughed, I thought they knew the joke. So I went, oh, you know that joke? All right, okay, well, here's another one. And then they were laughing at that and then they thought I was doing an act. And I was being genuine, thinking, hang on, what are you laughing at here? Do you know this joke? All right, you do know this joke, right? Forget that joke. All right, here's another joke. And then that was getting Anyway, I finally got around to telling a couple of jokes, got off, loved the buzz off it, and then watched the rest of the night. And I just went, wow, I'd love to try this again. And I went along the next week and wrote a bit of material that didn't kind of work. And then I went, at my 3rd or 4th time, I had this job on a building site doing measurements in an office where if I did them, I could just do what I wanted to do in the office. So I'd sit the whole day in the office and write a routine. And I wrote this routine, and on cockroaches, I had it like, a 5-minute routine that I spent the whole week working on.
Mate, you've never seen more cockroaches than Bondi. All the restaurants along the front there.
Yeah.
Fuck, mate. I used to just open my cutlery drawer and just go like repress, just close. It was putrid.
Yeah, and then I took that bit to Melbourne, and they wouldn't get a laugh because they didn't have any freaking cockroaches. I dropped this bit. It's been ages writing, but it worked so well. But also, I found my voice. I found, this is the stuff I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about politics. I don't want to talk about pop culture or rugby or football or anything in the papers. I want to talk about all these stupid things. And then that was what my voice was. It was kind of, so I wrote a bit the next week about shopping trolley, and like it was a whole narrative. And it was great having this job. I could just sit and figure out jokes all day. And it took off quite quickly. And it took off in a good way because I had an original voice. I was talking about, I had subject matters that other comics weren't talking about, and that really kind of, propelled it along.
Fully, man. Yeah, like the genius of what you do is like you pick the most banal everyday things, and without any vulgarity or swearing, you make them hilarious. And like there's a genius to that. Like it's the polar opposite of what we do on this show, where we just steep so low and just dip into this bottomless well of vulgarity and crassness.
That's always funny too, though.
Yeah, it's great fun. We have an awesome time. People love us for it. But yeah,
sometimes you see comics that have come through YouTube, and you know, those YouTubers, it's like they've got Tourette's. It's on a different level of like, wow.
Well, I remember last year at the Koala fundraiser, you know, we had local comics who just hit every single note for all the local jokes. We had you being you up there, just absolutely nailing it. But they had a TikTok comedian open the show. And the poor kid, mate, oh my God, it was like watching a full-on head-on car crash. It was so bad. And he just...
Because nobody... Not one of the people in the audience would have had a TikTok account.
No, it wasn't.
So,
no, it was a bunch of old dinosaurs up there, mate.
You're telling me he bombed harder than the IRA during the peace march?
Oh, yeah, mate. He went straight down. He disappeared. He was definitely not in the world green room after the show either. I think he hightailed it pretty quickly.
Whenever you have a bad gig, you just slip off.
Yeah.
Out that back door.
Mate, how much...
But the other person, sorry, just to go...
Yeah, go for it.
In that period, and it's of the utmost importance because... it was a guy called Bob Franklin, a comic.
Oh, yeah.
And he really, he had that subject matter that was different to everyone else's. And he had a style that wasn't in your face. Like, to a large extent, he was the mentor for me. He was, and he'd been doing stand-up for 5 years, and he was, you know, unapologetic about his subject matter and the rhythm that he was doing it in. Like, everyone else was coming out, he would like take his time, and I went, wow, that really, you know, that's very influential to me.
Yeah, I love that, man. The pace of things, like there's so much pregnant air, dead air in what you do, and like it is an underrated style of comedy where, you know, the American style seems to be the most famous style. It's very fast paced and slick, and like your style's like
and cocky and full of confidence, and you know, it's nice just to go against the grain sometimes.
It's so refreshing to watch that. And I was just revisiting some of your work before the interview, and I was like, wow, yeah, this is like a lost art almost. There's such a different style that is popular these days.
Yeah, there's so many gags that spring to my mind from shows I've been to of yours. Like, I love the funniest spot on the stage.
Yeah.
I love...
I met this person.
Chickens are morons? Is that another one? I can't remember.
I do this thing about, you know, is it the funniest part of the stage, and then you move back and forward, and then, you know, and a guy was saying, he said, I went to clowning school, and the first video they ever showed us is that bit of stand-up. To explain that's what clowning is, because if you're non-verbal, you're not talking, but you're getting laughs, and they go, that's really what clowning is.
Yeah, because there's different...
I was unaware of that at the time. I just written a joke.
I've listened to Marin heaps. They talk about sort of those different pillars of comedy and which one different comics fall into. But one of the best things about yours, mate, is just because of that sort of observational humour that you have and making, as Smivvy was saying, just the most mundane sort of daily thing, the most comical riot.
Yeah, then you own it. Then you own that subject matter.
Yeah, but it's so family friendly as well. Yeah. And like, you know, one of my favourite memories when I was just a kid, I'd finish work at Tracks magazine, 17 years old, and we'd race home to watch the show that you were doing with Bob.
Yeah.
And people just loved it, man. Like they loved you. And like, I reckon you'd be one of the most beloved comedians, because not all comedians enjoy that feeling of being
time.
Liked.
I was quite young at the time too. I was probably about 25 or so.
Like, how trippy was that? Like, to just go from, like, how quickly was that when you were doing that first one to being on TV and all of a sudden, you know?
It was
frothing.
actually. I went from just starting stand up to getting on the midday show was a big thing. Yeah. Getting on the midday show was like the start really of my career, and I went on it the first time. Like, it's an old audience. Like, they freaking just. I used to say they just sit there knitting, and then you get to the punchline of the joke, they just knit a bit quicker. You know? But there was Jeff Harvey. He was a musical director of the band. he was great, and the band, so you could hear them laughing, and if you could get them laughing, then you were off.
Yeah.
But you just do it down the barrel of the TV live, like in like supermarket, like it was so well overly lit. Everything was against you and an old audience. And then I went on tour with a guy. He said, "You should go on tour," and I went, "Oh, I was just started doing headline spots." And you could probably get a crowd to people. So the first night we did this East Coast of Australia. We did Newcastle on a Tuesday night, and there was 900 people in there. It was sold out, and they were all over 60. they're all from the midday show.
No way.
Audience of the midday show.
And we're on a bit late. That's the only problem with the show.
And Akmal Sally was the support. And he had a bit in his eye. We go, "Here you go, you cunts." Just didn't go down too well with these freaking 60-year-old women. But yeah, and I did this. I did the East Coast tour. Eric Banner was the other support. We were having to him, but we ended up coming up here to Byron, and we were doing dick tricks. Just, a mate of mine was doing these dick tricks. And then this other guy came into the pub. He lived with John, to the sunglasses. Friend, he goes, "I hear you boys are doing dick tricks." And so I go, "Yeah, what you got?" So he gets a piece of paper out and starts reeling out the dick tricks. And so this is Simon, the support tour manager. Anyway, the two of them went on to form Puppetry of the Penis.
Iconic Australian act, yeah.
And I was flown to LA to do Jay Leno, and on the day before they phoned me up and said, "You've been dropped for Puppetry of the Penis."
No way.
And so, so I was there catching up, and they go, "We're just on Jay Leno," and I've just been dropped. I went along with them and filmed the thing for a laugh, but it was so funny. The guy that was the tour manager ended up becoming this guy in Puppetry of the Penis, and it became a huge. At the same time as Eric Banner got the part in the Hulk and got the part in, so I had these, he said the support act and the tour manager.
And were you just sitting on
was I jealous? No, I was very happy for them.
Mate, I tell ya, fucking vulgarity has been our greatest cultural export. We're decades deep in it, from Puppetry of the Penis through to Paul Fisher. Like, we're just... Bogan is the new oil.
Simon said to me, like, "Do you think it would work in Edinburgh?" And I go, "Absolutely, it'll work in Edinburgh. You're two Australians being really uncouth. This is everything that the British want you to be."
It's so true, mate.
You're playing right into their hands.
It's baked into us as a nation, and I feel like again, this goes back to, I guess, our long history with Ireland. We were the home of Irish convicts and slaves. That was the settler colony that existed. Was a quick history lesson that the British conquered the joint and then fucking sent all the convicts from Ireland down here.
I wonder what percentage of them were Irish. Because there were quite a few of them. It was a criminal class of Britain, but it was a hell of a lot of them.
Yeah, well, the biggest folk heroes in this country were Irish.
Ireland was Britain then at that stage. It was. The whole of Ireland was occupied by Britain at that stage.
Right, yeah. And so, Australia's greatest heroes to this day were illiterate Irish, fucking bushrangers. Ben Hall and Ned Kelly. And that kind of culture of crassness and uncouthness and just taking the piss out of aristocrats it's so baked into us up until this day. And I think it's probably part of why people gravitated to you so well, because I don't think you necessarily get the love if you're English here. I just
no, you don't. You don't. I feel sorry for them, to be honest. They call them whinging palms.
Yeah, fully.
I do. I feel sorry for them because because they're just people really, but they do have a strong, warm connection to the Irish in Australia. Yeah.
It's an interesting and often overlooked facet of the culture here. I think people have forgotten that we really gravitate towards an anti-authoritarian stance, and I think that's a lot to do with the bushrangers. And the story of the bushrangers is the story of impoverished Irish people being persecuted by aristocratic
and
English
even
people.
Eureka and all of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Would have been, and I've always found the fact that you, I don't know, celebrate, but really mark Anzac Day as a real, and Gallipoli is one of those things that where I find that really interesting because it's marking a war that was ugly.
Mate, it is.
I don't think in Britain they would be, in Northern Ireland they're triumphant about 1690, the Battle of the Boyne, when they just mark, we won that, we won, we kicked their asses. Yeah. Whereas over here, you mark a day where it was horrible and you didn't win anything.
No, we were flogged.
And that's the point, right? Like that's the point of that day, is that it's a somber day where we reflect on the true nature of war and one of the great manipulations of this nation by the grubs who conquered us, the British, who would famously sipping tea and sending young working Australians off to die on this beach. And the greatest anti-war song, funnily enough, is written by an Irish band, the Pogues, called the band played Waltzing Matilda about that exact day.
It's Eric Bogle. He lives in Adelaide. Wrote that song. He's written a couple of great war songs.
Really? He was in the Pogues, was he?
No, he wrote that song, and the Pogues did it.
Oh, is that right? The Pogues covered a Red Gum song?
Yeah.
No way.
No, Red Gum is the Waltzing Matilda song, and that's an Anzac song as well. But I was only 19.
And he's written another song. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
A lot of people call it the Green Fields of France, but how do you do, young Willie McBride? Do you mind if I sit here down by your graveside? So it's a guy sitting at a graveside going, did you die in glory, or was it all in vain?
Right.
And that's about the First World War and Gallipoli, that other song.
Very similar subject matter. Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if I think he might have even been asked or commissioned to write that song by the Australian government. I'm not 100% sure, but he's a Scottish guy, but he lives in Adelaide.
Yeah, okay. Well,
he's a great songwriter.
Maybe it's because of Gallipoli. Maybe it's because of the origins
Pogues
of the
really
country.
brought it to people's attention.
Mate, it's one of the great tracks, and there has been just a long-running distrust of the British and that system. And mate, I'd fucking love to see that Union Jack fucked off out of the flag. To be honest,
what do you really think?
Still there,
mate. What about when? Just going back a couple of steps, because we leaped into sort of like your career taking off.
Yep.
But just on that sort of Irish-Australian camaraderie, like when you first moved from England to Australia, was it instant? Did you feel like, I found some people who understand?
As I say, it was a Bondi, and then we went to B&S, and I got to get out and see the country. And then when I was on tour, starting to tour, I was going, oh my God, their surnames are the same. Their friggin' heads are the same. The way they go on is exactly the same.
Drinking culture? How's the drinking culture?
There was this guy talking about borrowing a gun, selling a gun to somebody else, and he goes, anyway, I was in McSwegan's farm, the back of McSwegan's farm, and I was and I was just laughing my head off. That sounds like this conversation could be in Ireland. All the surnames were the same. And they were talking about the same carry on, getting, shooting rabbits and getting guns. Yeah,
and it's crazy. Like I feel like my family's from Forbes, like in the Central West, and the further west you go, I feel like the more Irish the genes get. People just get frecklier and whiter and less set up for the blazing inferno in the sky that they have to deal with. The culture, and it's like I think that was how it kind of panned out. The Irish people got banished once their little fucking jail stints were up, and they just said, fuck off to the countryside and do your best. And it's still kind of, it's settled that way.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but
Ballarat and places like that have got a lot of Irish, or in that area where, Ned Kelly was from. There's a load of Irish there.
Well, when all that was going on, Ned Kelly and Ben Hall, when they were running amok and robbing the aristocrats of their gold, like, the country kind of teetered on civil war because they were getting hidden and looked after by the many other illiterate and poor Irish people in those areas. And that's why the cops couldn't get them for so long, because, they were being harboured.
Yeah. They've never been able to do a good movie on it, though, have they?
Nah.
Every single Ned Kelly film is, reeked to high heaven. It's got a curse on it, hasn't it?
Did you ever see the Mick Jagger one? where Mick Jagger
No.
plays Ned Kelly? It's
No.
Are you joking?
no. There's a film when Mick Jagger's like in his prime
Mate,
playing Ned
that is
Kelly.
At the height of his fame.
Mate, the
actually-
Rolling Stones are responsible for some cultural appropriation, but that fucking takes the cake, mate.
That's a
Mick Jagger and his stovepipes representing Ned Kelly.
I
Fuck.
don't think. Where's my horse? But I think the first motion picture ever made was about Ned Kelly. Ever. Or you could. I'll have to look that up. But
Yeah,
I'm
there's
almost
something about
positive
that, yeah,
there's some like the very first ever motion picture shot on film is a Ned Kelly film.
Yeah.
Isn't that mad?
That is crazy.
Yeah.
We loved him.
Yeah. Have you ever seen that Not Quite Hollywood, that documentary?
Yes, that is sick. That
on all the
movie.
Australian films.
Yeah.
Tarantino talking about his love for them.
It's about all the that sort of art house, sort of road niche, outback sort of terror stuff that's going on.
Yeah, Wake in Fright.
Yeah.
My mate first got a video player, and his mum went away. We got a porno, and we got Mad Max 1, and then we're all chomping at the bit to watch Mad Max 2. So that was kind of that first introduction to Australia. Oh, they used to play the Picnic at Hanging Rock every frigging Christmas. Do your head in. And then I was so annoyed to find out it hadn't even happened.
Yeah.
It was a frigging made up story.
Yeah, that sucks. So your first image of Australia is through Mad Max. Is that your first sort of introduction to the place?
Yeah, but
Would you have
it
ever
had
dreamed
that
that you were going to
feeling.
live here after watching
Yeah.
that? That's mad.
well, it was a bicentennial year, January 26th, which is a controversial date for a lot of people. But for me, I was working on a building site in London, and I came home, and everyone's watching the TV. And what's going on here? It was a Saturday, I'm pretty sure. And he had worked on a building site on a Saturday, and it was freezing. And they're all watching, and I was looking at the harbour, Sydney Harbour, of all these boats. And it never clicked that was summer. I just thought, wow, what a beautiful day in the middle of winter. Like, what's it going to be like in summer? It's going to be amazing in summer. And I had a friend, he had been deported from Australia, and the people I ended up sharing a flat with, they were all illegal immigrants, which is why I wrote that film, The Crack. It was based on that period. But I was here within a month of watching that thing. I bought a one-way ticket with Aeroflot, that Russian airline, and I got here and just thought, wow. And the first day I went, oh yeah, I'm staying here. This is gorgeous. They love the Irish. Everyone went, oh, you're Irish. Oh, we love the Irish. And you go, and the weather's nice. And I was working on building sites outside. I thought, right, I'm not going back to.
It's
to
never
London
changed,
ever.
Smithy. Your generation was growing up in Bondi.
Yeah, mate. I like my memories of Bondi in the 90s. It's crazy because we discussed them before we went on there. Like one of the houses we shared was in Francis Street, which is the same street you landed in, and it was with an Irish guy who'll be listening to this show. He's a fan of the pod. Who Dave, Jim, I think it's Dave. Anyway, but my memories of this guy was like I would wake up and he'd just be cooking organ meats in the kitchen. Just
Cooking what?
organ meats, offal.
Yeah.
The traditional fucking.
yeah,
mate,
liver.
I'll never forget that smell.
Yeah.
But yeah, my memories of the eastern suburbs in the 90s was just fucking whippity, pasty, drunk Irishmen on every street corner babbling in unintelligible warp speed English.
Oh, they?
Yeah.
Oh, they? Yeah, we were there. We conquered the place.
And
There
like-
wasn't a shot fired.
And weirdly, you kind of like, I don't know, it's like they were our cousins. Like, we were like, fuck, these people are like so similar to us. Like, we just kind of can't really understand what they're saying exactly. But like, there was a mutual respect. Whereas, like, you would also get English people coming to town, coming to Bondi, and they had a different attitude. Like, there was often like they would kind of talk down to you. It was like you're a bit of a like a colonial subject or something, and that was peculiar to like being your fucking hometown on the other side of the planet and having some posh Englishman like demand drugs off you in a toilet cubicle, like
Just
fucking
one particular day.
demanding drugs off the local skinheads in the toilet cubicle. Was just like, wow. So that arrogance was nothing a good hiding couldn't sort out.
In the Crack, I had this scene which was true to life. A friend of mine, Chris, he was in bed and they came to the door, immigration officers, to arrest Joe Buckley. And Joe, they said, we're here to arrest Joe Buckley and Joe said, yeah, Joe's in his underpants. Yeah, he's in bed there. So they jump on Chris. And by the time Chris gets his passport out and shows him that he's Chris, they're going, well, where's Joe Buckley? And I know really like, the guy answering the door was Joe. Joe took off and lay on the beach and got away.
And what was it like for you?
Still here to this day.
Well played, Joe. Oh, you legend. We'll have to redact that name. It's probably a fake name.
No,
anyway.
because he got residency. There was an amnesty
Oh,
that
perfect.
they let people, if you've been here for like 10 years or something,
Wow.
they let people stay.
That's insane. That is very different to the current kind of migration policies of the government, especially if you're, from Sri Lanka or somewhere.
Yeah.
But mate, what was Bondi like in those days? Because my memories of it, it was a low rent kind of fucking sleazy,
It was
steezy joint.
It was great. I think it was $22, or no, $60, $60 a week for the room in Francis Street. And then I ended up taking over the whole house, and I had about 20 people living in that house over the Christmas period, like for about 6 months, in a 4-bedroom house with about 20 people.
Subletting the bejesus out of it.
Yeah.
Making a packet you were, I bet.
And we decided we were going to move out. It was such a mess, and but we couldn't get our bond back until we cleaned up. So we cleaned up and realised it was quite nice, and we stayed. Well, yeah, you know what? It's actually not too bad here.
Wouldn't be the first people to do that.
And we had a big party before we were leaving, and I remember there was this cockroach running up the wall, and I booted the cockroach, and I put my foot right through the cupboard, and the cockroach made away. And I had to pay for that cupboard, out of the bond.
Mate, getting back to sort of like those days where you've gone from, kicking cockroaches and holes in walls to, like pretty much lording it, having your own TV show, rubbing shoulders with all these
I
celebrities.
found a blue-tongued lizard when I was on a building site. And I couldn't believe it. Like that was like the weather.
Yeah.
The birds are all coloured in. The birds are so colourful. And you got freaking lizards. And I took the lizard and I put it in my tool bag and I took it home with me. That was the first time I'd ever seen like a lizard ever. And you had them wandering around. But yeah. I don't know where he went. I thought he'd be in the back garden. I could just pet him, but he took off. I never saw him again.
Mate, when you're like at the, that sort of, I guess, that avalanche of just energy is behind you and you're just doing things that you never thought you were probably going to be doing. Like, how weird did it get? Were you kind of like pinching yourself at times and like looking around going...
The best thing about it, and to this day, was seeing Australia. Yeah. Like, because I blew all my money. I was working on a building site, we were out drinking on the weekend. I had a year's visa, and I didn't really get to see Australia. I was like, I got to Byron Bay. I got up here in June, and I thought, wow, this is such an amazing place. We drove on the old from Sydney in a car on a surfing week, and then I thought, I've blown it. And then I ended up applying for residency, got residency, and then I started doing stand-up, and I got to see the tropics, like all of it. Like I've driven, the only thing I haven't driven is a Nullarbor. But I've flown to Perth, and then flew to Kalgoorlie, hired a car, drove to Esperance, Albany, Margaret River, Perth, Geraldton, Port Hedland, all the way to Broome. I've done that a couple of times.
Yeah, you've seen more of Australia than probably most
And I've
Australians.
driven from Melbourne to, Cairns. Wow. And I've been up to Weipa, and I've been to Arnhem Land, and in Groot Island and the Gulf of Carpentaria.
That's that end of the country is nuts.
Oh, really? Yeah, and amazing. Yeah, and like we stayed on Weipa Island, and indigenous people would come in. And they were like blue. They were that black.
Yeah.
They were like it was in the summer. They were that, and they had freaking amazing teeth, and they all looked so healthy. And they were kicking a football, and they just were fantastic at it. And I was just like, wow, this is another culture, and I'm really getting to see it. This is an old culture, and I've really got to see this country. It's massive.
How do the jokes land in all the different areas in Australia? Because it is such a huge country when you compare it to like Great Britain or anything, where like town to town,
that was the other thing
accents and the cultures change.
The country people I could really identify with because you know, I grew up in a country area in Ireland, and you know, I just would look at their heads and just look. They just think we go on the same way, and they got the same jokes. I did a gig in Borroloola in an indigenous community, and you know, and it was a drinking indigenous community, and they had a black bar and a white bar, and they had a list of names of people barred for life, people barred for 6 months, and the whole audience that I did the show to was indigenous, and we had a great night. We had a real laugh. Yeah. Chaotic. Like these guys. This is near it's called Hell's Gate. It's a border between Queensland and Northern Territory on the sea, and below Groot Island, and you know, it turned into a brawl. But these guys, they heard that I was doing that pub, and they lived in an island halfway in between, so they hired a plane, and I saw them out the stage, out the back, just to come off, and they were laughing their heads off. And they go, Jimmy, we heard you coming here. We can't, because we knew you were going to die on your ass. And fuck me, Jimmy, you delivered. And they were laughing their heads off. Like, it was such a chaotic night.
So cool, yeah.
It was a chaotic night. There was a fight broke out. And it was just a fun night. It wasn't a traditional stand-up comedy night where, you know, but I was the fodder, and we had a laugh. You know, it was chaos, but it was a fun night.
That's so sick.
Oh, man.
How does, like, do you find the same thing, like, just in terms of process? Because Smivvy and I do a couple of live shows every now and again. And when we do, like, what do you reckon, Smivvy? Like 30 seconds to 1 minute of stand-up at the front of it. Like, just because it's like you got to introduce the show, and it's kind of got elements of that. It's terrifying and really hard. Yeah. Like, do you, with your processes, are they same as they've always been? Like, do you find the same things funny, or are you, as you get older, is it easier or harder?
You repeat yourself. Yeah. That was the biggest shock when I saw stand-up first. I saw someone the next week tell the exact same story as they told the week before. I was like, oh, wow. And then it sort of dawned on me, oh, this is an act. And so if I do a joke that works, that I know works, and I find it a structure, then I'm quite at ease. But if I'm doing a new joke, I kind of get nervous. Yeah. And I try and put it in between two bits that work really well. You know, you can hurt yourself doing a new joke. You can really, you know, humble yourself. I love watching tryout nights, what they call them, where people get up and everyone's doing new material, because you can feel the rawness and the braveness of it all. If I see somebody and they're doing the same bit over and over again, you just kind of tune out to it. Yeah. But when you're hearing somebody, all right, you're being brave, kid. You're really being brave, and you know, you don't know where this is going to land, and you know, it's like, you know, and do you, without a parachute, without any sort of safety net, just getting up there, you could die in your hole. Oh, big time. And do you find like when you're, because of that observational nature of what you do, are you constantly looking at every little scenario and going, oh, that could be funny, and like, how does your filter work? I don't know if constantly, but I do tape stuff on my phone if I find something. If I find myself, because it's an organic thing more than, is that funny? Like, if I've tried, is that funny? What about that? What? And then it freaking does your head in. But if you find yourself just going, you go, right, what was that I just did, to? Yeah, okay. Can I explain that to somebody else? Can I capture the reason that made me laugh? So I'm often the first observer of my jokes, or the first person to go, ooh, write that down. That's the way to do it, really, yeah.
And you crushed it, man. Like, you had your own TV show. You were part of a pretty golden age of, like, Australian comedy, I would say. I think you were on Full Frontal. All those names you mentioned, like Eric Banner, Sean McAuliffe, Dave O'Neill. Like, I imagine, like,
and Mike Disabansky,
Carl Barron,
Michael Veitch. I did a whole a year of a sitcom that never really went to air. It got kind of pulled, but it was all right. But it was with Michael Veitch, Mike Disabansky, Gina Riley, and Jane Turner, the girls from Kath and Kim.
Right.
And the director, Ted Emery, who directed Full Frontal and Kath and Kim, and he also directed The Crack.
Wow.
He was like a, you know, quite a humble man, but he done some amazing comedy in that period of time.
Yeah, yeah. That stuff to me like captures Australian culture beautifully, like that period. And I don't know what's happened since then, but I mean, Fat Pizza, I guess, is fucking all time, and in that kind of same genre of just like
The sketch shows fell away. They don't really exist in the UK either,
right.
Nah.
and they stopped doing them really.
There is a group doing it like a YouTube sketch show that my kids watch and love.
Oh, right.
I can't.
That's interesting.
Can't
isn't it?
recall what it is, but they love it. It's like just sketch. But still, as Smivvy was saying, like that Australian observational thing, he was just telling me this one that he saw earlier about the
The stacks on.
Oh,
the
yeah.
hospital bed.
Oh my god.
But that's got to be Australian. Is that global?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is that
Is it a global thing or is it?
Yeah. Well, my wife was telling me about it. They used to have wogs against skips, stacks on. I go, what? And she was telling me, like, all the skips would, have a fight with the wogs and stack on, just jump on that. Just thought, I'm going to put that in the show. And, yeah. We
Oh,
were
mate.
doing the rule of getting beaten at pool without potting the ball, and then you had to drop your tags.
Yeah.
Remember we did some sketch in that where we took that to the nth degree. You had to drop your trousers and do a lap.
I miss those times, man. I miss that humour. That show in particular was just so fun. And like
Just
just
good cast too. There was Sean McAuliffe that was where he started. He was a writer on it. And of course, Glenn Robbins, who still does great stuff.
yeah.
Russell Coit.
Russell Coy, yeah. Those Toyota ads are great, aren't they?
Yeah.
I
I
get
saw
a giggle out of them. You very rarely get a giggle out of a TV ad. I go, oh yeah.
it's good, mate.
And how high did you go? Like, when did it? You mentioned Jay Leno before. Like, what were the kind of real trippy, like, superstar moments where you got to peer in on the elite world of entertainment in your career?
Yeah, the stand up in America, it was always interesting going over there and going on Conan. I did that a few times, about 3 or 4 times. And one time I was there, and they take you to the clubs. They go around the clubs, and you do your jokes, and then they weren't getting a big laugh. And I go, all I need is an audience if I have an audience. And then Chris Rock turned up, and he was doing the MTV Awards, and one of the writers was a stand-up who knew me and said, oh, get Jimeoin to do 10 minutes as opposed to doing the 4 minutes for Conan. Get him to do 10 minutes and try other stuff, and then bring on Chris Rock. And then did that, and they went, all right, come with us to the next place. And then they said, do it tomorrow night as well. And then word had got round that he was, so I turned up at these clubs the following night, and they were packed, rammed. 10 minutes was really working, and I bring on Chris Rock, but he was just writing jokes, and he was being, honest about the fact that this is just jokes for MTV. Try this, and he had the writers sitting at the front. Do that joke about, that's a shit joke. All right, here we go. And he would do the joke, and then you could see it kind of getting better each night. And then I did Conan, which is recorded at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I went back to the hotel and watched MTV and Chris Rock come out of the ground, with the MC Hammer pants on, and do these jokes that killed. And I went, all right, that's how it works. That's how they do. That's the commercial angle on stand-up, where they have a bunch of writers, and you're not doing jokes for the first time. You know they work. Yeah. And it was great to watch. It was like, wow, that's really interesting.
And what about now, mate? Like when you're touring now, I think my family and I went and saw you down at the Enmore last year or the year before. And, you walked out and you were like, oh, this is going to be a good night. I can tell when it's going to be a good night because you go, everyone's mouths are already open, like they're halfway ready to laugh.
Right. Yeah. It's a good room, the Enmore, isn't it?
Already onto it. Like, you get the exact same buzz and joy out of the stand-up that you've...
And it's bigger now than ever it was. Like, I did 160 gigs last year of my own show, which is an hour and a half long. like I do 45 minutes and a break, 20 minutes and then 45. So I consider that the show. So I did 160 of them, and I do like a load in the UK. So and the UK's become a really big market for me now. So, but sometimes you meet people that remember you from TV, and they go, "Are you still doing stand-up?" You're like, "Yes, I am. You know, I'm still. This is what I do."
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been really nice to start my career here, and then as my parents were getting older, I thought I'm going to have to give this a red hot go. And you know, there's a touring company, Live Nation. They said, you know, we'll tour you, but you've got to commit to coming over, and we're going to try and build your audience in the UK. And I started doing that about 16 years ago, and it's worked. It's really built. So I've got equally a big audience.
Yeah, I read you were doing proper
really,
stadium sort of shows.
Yeah, really big shows. So it's, you know, and of all the sort of art forms to be affected by things like Facebook and Instagram, stand-up has become really big because of those little clips. People, you know, you won't listen to a whole song, but you'll listen to a minute of somebody, and you go, "Oh, who's that? Oh, that's really good," and then that leads into them saying, "Oh, well, that person's going to be." So the Instagram thing was a real big help to my career. Yeah, because it started at a time where I had a lot of back catalogue clips from stuff that I'd done in the past, and all that stuff, which was maybe shown on a TV show once or whatever, all of a sudden became, you know, and then people are tuning into you again.
Yeah, I mean, and comedy is going through a renaissance right now. Like, it's never been more important to our species, at least in the English-speaking world. Like, I look, you know, Joe Rogan's deciding US elections.
Yeah.
Jimmy Dawes out there just fucking spraying like a madman, just spitting truth. Like,
I did these gigs I did Istanbul not that long ago, and Budapest, and throughout Amsterdam, and all these European countries are opening up, and they all speak English.
Yeah.
I did this gig one night, and it was in English. And they were all, you know, from Istanbul, and they were slagging off Islam. Like, if I had said something like that about Islam over here, you'd been freaking lynched. But they were really proper slagging it off, and everyone was having a real good laugh at it. And I was like, oh, wow, yeah, this is a big thing that people just, you know, comedy can be one of those things where you cuts across everything.
yes, mate, exactly. It's such a good point. It's so disarming, and maybe it goes all the way back to the jesters, you know, way back in the day where they were the only people who could speak truth to power, and it still performs that function today. And the likes of your Rogans, you know, going back to George Carlin, Richie Pryor even, like these people were making cutting social critiques wrapped up in jokes, but the foundation of it was truth. And because it was wrapped up in a joke, you had to let it pass, you know. And even to this day, you watch Kill Tony or any of these things, it's like there's some questionable fucking stereotyping and like, but there's a lot of truth in it, and it's wrapped up in a joke, so you have to wear it. But mate, like, thank God for comedy, because if we didn't have it, like, it's really the predominant form of truth telling right now.
Yeah. When I started doing comedy, I knew nothing about comedy. Do you remember Russell Gilbert? He used to be the warm-up guy on Hey. He is a historian on comedy. And I was explaining to him, like, I've just come into this totally naive, and, you know, for about 2 or 3 weeks, he could come round to my place, and I'll just show you videos of everyone that's of any importance. And he showed me Gary Shandling. He showed me who did you just mention?
George Carlin.
George Carlin. That stuff he used to do about stuff. That bit he had on stuff, and I thought, wow, this is crazy. This is really different. So he showed me all this Sam Kinison. Remember him?
Oh yeah, coked up maniac.
Yeah. You ever see that clip of him on Dangerfield's? And 2 or 3 comics go out doing really shit jokes, and then he comes out and just picks up the mic stand and just slams it into the ground, and you went, wow, what's going to happen here? And you know, just seeing people like that, just going, oh, this is a real art form, and I'm into this now. I'm into I'm into the art form. I'm really into stand-up.
Yeah.
This is what I like watching people that are good, that are different, and I like that it's, you know, progressive, and, you know, every once in a while you just see someone at one of the festivals go, right, you're a card, you're taking this sideways, you're taking it in a different direction from everyone else.
And when you're into the science of it and you're performing yourself, do you still hear the laughs? Like, do you hear it hit, and do you feel the genuine reaction to it? Or are you kind of almost just cruising on?
I am personally striving for that. Yeah. I'm trying to find subject matter no one talks about. I'm trying to find and say it in a way that no one else does, you know, and just to be your own voice in it. And I don't do politics, but when I see other comics doing it really well, I love it. I just go, wow. Yeah. Like, you see people like Chappelle, that bit they did on SNL the other night.
It was insane. It was so good.
That's so good. That's live TV, and he's just doing it on a tone and a level that you would think was just a podcast or something, where he's just chatting to people, and he's leaning forward and he's smoking a cigarette and doing a joke, but also, you know, something very poignant. I just thought, he's taking it somewhere else.
And his story is interesting because he's like, you know, he's a virtuoso. He's done the 10,000 hours. You know, those stories about him just posting up on street corners in Central Park in New York with a hat on the ground and just getting his hours up, just getting practice in, just like reps. And comedy, it's an art form. It's something that, you know, someone like him, he's a fascinating character. His passion for the discipline and his discipline in the passion is like fucking remarkable, and the proof's in the pudding. The guy is the go.
Well, as a kid, the first stand-up that I saw, because I'd only seen Billy Connolly in interviews, and I got to see him when I was maybe about 13, and I thought, wow, this is great, this is amazing. And then when we was about 15, that Eddie Murphy, Delirious, coincided with the friggin' video coming out.
Oh, how is
and we
that
all
thing?
saw it, and we're like, what, fuck, this is amazing, this guy's a god. You know?
Full-blown god. Like, and that was like, you know, you talk about the Led Zeppelin.
Apparently he was 21.
He was 21?
Yeah.
Are you joking? Mate, and that was like rock star, like the most high energy, piss your pants explosion of African American culture. You know, they were so kept down in similar ways to the Irish, and the way they fucking just rip the chains off and explode culturally.
And then
through that
Russell
period.
Gilbert showed me Richard Pryor, and it was the same thing. You know, just friggin' howling their heads off.
And so much like trauma, like that's a coping mechanism for trauma. I find is having that dark sense of humor and that brutal connection to truth telling. Richie Pryor obviously like grows up in poverty, like in a whorehouse, and he's disfigured in a fire. Like he has the fucking worst life ever. And his way of coping with that is humor. And for me, it's the same. And for I think like Rogan and a lot of these comedians say that too. It's like
and Lenny Bruce, like I was totally naive to all of these people and just finding out about what they were doing. Richard Pryor, apparently he moved away from LA and went to somewhere like Phoenix or Seattle and just worked there on bits just to try and make it different from everyone in New York was doing, because he was like a hack comic in New York. He had a material that if you looked at it now, you go, that's kind of like a... And then he just thought, I'm going to another city and I'm going to just, you know, come in through these little clubs and try and build a routine, an act different from what other people were doing. And he did it. And, you know, then bang, he just stood out. Yeah.
Well, mate, it's been awesome chatting with you. I've really loved it, getting to share an audience with the great Jimeoin. It's
thank you
a
very
joy,
much.
mate, an absolute joy. And a little anecdote, my old man actually tried to give Russell Gilbert a joint at a wedding they were at once, and he just ran for his life, didn't want to know about it. So Alfie's always had a fairly low opinion of Russell Gilbert.
Yeah, fair. We hate clean skins on this program.
Russell probably would have loved a joint.
Yeah, well, that's what maybe it's just might have been paparazzi around or something, who knows. But, mate, thanks so much for coming in.
Cheers,
You're an
fella.
absolute legend.
Good on you.
And
cheers, boys. Behind the camera.
anything that people can check out that you got coming up? Because
I don't know. I'm on tour in the UK. I've just been for a dip.
There might be some Swellians over there who listen and can go and check out the
and then I'm back doing the comedy festival.
Perfect.
In with Bob Franklin. Bob and I are doing a tour through the month of April in round. So if you get a chance to come and see me in Melbourne.
Oh, that's not far
And
off
also
at all.
I'm doing the Enmore again. And the Coliseum.
Perfect.
So this gig at Rudy Hill.
No way.
Rudy
the
Hill.
Coliseum at Rudy Hill. Are you joking?
Yeah.
Is that ironic or what?
And and you know, in Adelaide and Perth. So yeah, I'm still doing stand up. Come and see me.
Good on you, mate.
Cheers.
Magic.